Hello. Hello, everybody. How are you? Happy Friday if you're watching this on Friday. And happy whatever day it is. Do you see this? My little pineapple? Yeah, I use it to cover up the little things on the screen. I just tape it right on there so that I don't see how many people are watching the live stream. I've been doing that for, I think this is my 4th week doing it that way, where I just can't see it. I don't know. I just don't pay attention to how many people are watching. I just do my thing. And it is so much more fun to just not even look at like how many people are here. Good morning, Bola. I was just thinking about you just before, hoping you would make it. So hello. Hello, Andrea. Good morning, everybody. How are you? Like, for real, I had to put it in the chat and everything because how are you? I This week has been really, really good, and yet, like on the surface, it has been not productive at all in terms of like the classic sense of the word. Emotionally very productive, but that's been taken up a lot of my energy is the emotional processing that I feel like I've had going on under the surface. And I've been just kind of lazing around this week and taking lots of naps and just giving myself the downtime. I personally am headed into like kind of a busy week. I have a summit that I'm going to on Monday and Tuesday for my grocery stuff. And that I've been really looking forward to like all year, but to go out of town and stay a couple nights, it's like, and then have busy stuff on either side of it, it's like, I think I'm just going to rest now because I can feel that there's definitely something um, coming where I'm going to be glad I did. I'm going to be glad that I took the time to rest now because I don't think there's going to be another opportunity, maybe for a minute. So that's what I've been doing this week. Also, this week on Tuesday, I specifically asked about, the Sagittarius full moon, the super moon that we had on Tuesday was very, very dynamic for me personally. And it gave me a piece that I wanted to start off today's talk with. A type of natal chart that had never even heard of, didn't even know it was a thing. And I had my solar return reading from the astrologer last year. I got with him again this year. His name is Duncan, and I will put his email in the description after this. I don't know if Maddie has it to be able to put it in the description. That's okay. We'll put it in there after. But yeah, he is amazing. And if you're ever in the market for a solar return reading, I highly recommend him. I think that's mainly what he does, is like a kind of an in-depth look at your upcoming year. And then depending on what's kind of at the top of your thoughts and consciousness, he can look at different things across different charts. He's very knowledgeable. He's a Gemini rising. And so I feel like when he and I get together, I mean, you can just like talk for hours if you want to. So much fun. So I had that on Tuesday, and just like last year, it was absolutely incredible. And we started off the reading by him showing me my Draconic chart, spelled Draconic, Draconic natal chart, Draconic chart. I don't know what the right word is. Actually, I think if you go into astro.com and you look at like all the different kinds of charts you can pull, it's just called Draconic chart, I'm pretty sure. And basically, I'm going to try to summarize this given the fact that I know almost nothing about it. So here's like a very broad overview, and he sent me some things to read about it so I can feel a more in-depth video coming soon. But essentially, Draconic chart, it's like an entire chart based on the north and south node of the moon. It's a chart that can give you a layer of context. Almost, it feels like kind of underneath or behind your natal chart, the chart, like your tropical chart or whatever one you're usually used to looking at, it's like that chart shows you how your day-to-day energy is wired, and your day-to-day life is going to unfold, and maybe the bigger themes of like what are you going to see kind of in the biography of your life is more your tropical chart. And then the draconic chart, based on the north and south node of the moon, is more, why is your soul doing this? Like, what is even the point of the way your day-to-day life is unfolding? Like, yes, you're having this daily experience, but like, what is your soul doing with it? And that is your draconic chart, is like kind of that soul intention, soul taking the experience of your human life and turning it, transmuting it, putting it all together, all the pieces, and turning it into what? And so this was like extremely enlightening for me personally. I feel like it's been an initiation that was like so perfectly timed, like just divinely timed in my own life, to see my draconic chart for the first time ever this week, especially as we head up to the sun entering Cancer and the new moon in Cancer. And that's what we're going to spend the bulk of today talking about. And basically, like on my tropical natal chart, I have like a whole chunk, especially when you start putting asteroids in there, like there's just a shit ton of stuff in Gemini. And essentially, when you pull my draconic chart, all of that Gemini energy is moved into Cancer. And that makes so much sense for me and my little sensitive soul. And like, I mean, I have my IC in Cancer normally. You know, my sun is really late Gemini, so my progressed sun has been going through Cancer for like 30 years of my life. So like I had kind of attributed it to that. But now getting to see that like I have such a huge stellium of planets in Cancer in my draconic natal chart, it opened my perception of myself like this big. It was wild. So like a little bit about how it works, because it's super crazy, as far as like the way that your draconic chart, like how it actually works to get it from your tropical chart to that one is like, so the nodes, the north and south node of the moon in your tropical chart, your normal one, where are they? What degree points are they at? Now, basically, like all the planets in your chart are part of this, like, here's the nodes and here's everything else around the nodes. Like, imagine the planets stay as they are, right? Everything is in relationship and exactly the same. But take it to where the north node is going to move around to 0 degrees Aries. So you move the north node to 0 degrees Aries, like keeping everything together. So everything moves together. So my planets, my stellium in Gemini just got moved all together over to Cancer. And basically it's like, how many degrees is it going to take to get your north node to 0 degrees Aries? And that's how much everything is going to rotate. So everything that's in your natal chart, all the clusters of energy and everything is going to stay exactly the same. In your draconic chart, though, it's turned so that the 0 degree Aries north node is the same across everybody's chart. And that's going to put all your planets in completely different, maybe, signs. And I say maybe because it's like, how far away is your north node from 0 degrees Aries? Because imagine if you have like a 0 degree Libra north node, for example, that means you're going to have to turn everything on the chart like 180 degrees around so that you can get the north node over here to Aries. And that means like everything in your chart is like gonna be in the opposite sign, if that makes sense. In my chart, it was very different because my north node is at 17 degrees of Pisces normally. So that means like it's only 13 degrees to get my north node to 0 degrees of Aries. And so everything in my chart only moved 13 degrees, but that was enough to take all my Gemini and push it all into Cancer. So long story short, like I said, I feel a whole video coming on Draconic Charts because, as I've mentioned before, I am a huge nerd when it comes to the north and south node of the moon. They personally have helped me so much, that like, yeah, it just feels like a powerful course of study for me personally. The Draconic Chart, getting to see mine, has been incredibly powerful. And I don't think it's an accident that I would find out that I have in my Draconic natal chart, I have Sun, Chiron, Venus, Mercury, and a bunch of asteroids all in Cancer. And that makes so much sense with basically how my owning authenticity world has even come into existence. Is I have learned about emotions, I have learned about healing, and I have learned about triggers and processing trapped energy inside of us. I've learned about all of those things because they were happening to me. Like I was suffering in my own life. And because of my own suffering, my own wounding, it led me down a path of like, how do I feel better? I legit need to feel better or I don't want to be here anymore. So here, let me see if I can feel better. And that kicked off this whole journey. And one of the pieces that I'm going to share with you is, um, if you haven't already seen it, and even if you have, I've watched this thing like 40,000 times, is Brene Brown's first TED Talk called The Power of Vulnerability, where she talks about, I have a million quotes saved out of that 20-minute TED Talk, but one of the best ones is like, so I understand vulnerability is kind of the core of shame and fear and basically every negative emotion. You can like trace it back to vulnerability. But it appears that vulnerability is also the birthplace of joy, creativity, connection, love, like vulnerability. It's all coming out of this one pipe. Like all emotions are coming through this one pipe. And if you're not willing to feel fear or shame or whatever, if you're numbing, like what she talks about in the video, then you're also numbing all of the positive emotions. You're walling yourself off from shame and fear and guilt and regret and all those things, maybe, but you're also walling yourself off from love and creativity and fun and all the other things that come through our emotions. And so emotions for me personally are just a really big chunk of like what I like to talk about. Like if you're around my channel a lot, we talk about astrology, yes, but mostly we're talking about like how do you process the emotional piece of going through day-to-day life. That's really been my fascination for, I don't know, years now. Back when I found um Brene Brown's TED Talk, it was like very early 2015, and I was going through something. That part of the story isn't really relevant, but I was like, again, really struggling inside myself and feeling misunderstood and frustrated because I was feeling misunderstood. And as I go through the unfolding of my life, I run across Brene Brown's TED Talk, and that was early 2015. And like I said, I've watched it like 40,000 times. It's a good one. um, where she's talking about like, if you can't be seen, if you can't allow yourself to be seen, then you can't connect with anyone. And that basically, like, what she realized after her years of researching shame was like, the only thing that keeps us out of connection is our fear of disconnection. Like we're so afraid that we're going to be rejected, that fear of rejection is the only thing that keeps us separate. And so again, it's like vulnerability or emotions or emotional energy, like tapping into our feelings is, it's a powerful journey. I drew some cards for today and the energy that we're going to talk about, and this one jumped out at me just now, like the Queen of Wands out of the Light Seers deck. Like we have the power inside of us to create exactly the world that we want. And how do you do that? You listen to your guidance. And what is your guidance? It's your emotions. And so, like, I know for me, I was trapped in essentially hating myself and my life, being so frustrated inside my life that it wasn't like I wasn't getting the outcome that I wanted, and I was like at max frustration over it. And then to find out that, like, okay, so if we can, this part came through Abraham about and a half after I found Brene Brown's TED Talk and started even considering allowing myself to have feelings. I was so walled off from my emotions at that point that it took me like a year and a half to even soften to the idea that yes, you have feelings and yes, maybe we need to feel them. And so a year and a half later, middle of 2016, is when I found Abraham, and she really layered in the piece around like, what even are feelings? Like, what is this? Like, in a practical sense, like, what is it for? What's the purpose? How do they work? Like, in a Virgo kind of way, like, let's take it all apart and let's understand how it works. And Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks channeling Abraham, is who taught me how to trust my emotions, how to listen to them, which is to say, how to navigate in my life using my emotional guidance. Um, so, like, when I think about, like, in the most practical earth energy kind of way, I know emotions, like, we're talking about water energy. I'm a very earthy being. I have to take it and make it real, make it practical. Like, what are emotions? They are messages. They are like imagine, you have an email account and every 90 days it pops up a little message and says, "Hey, your password is going to expire in 7 days. Click here to change it." Like, that's all an emotion is it's the little pop-up. When your gas tank is running low, the little light comes on the dashboard, and then you can see, ding, oh, my gas tank is empty. I'm going to pull into the gas station here pretty soon and do the maintenance that's required to make that light go away. I'm going to click on the message and I'm going to change my password. I'm going to do what's required to make the message go away. And so in my experience of working with my emotions, specific emotions are no different than that. They are a messenger and they have a particular message. And when the message has been received, the messenger has no reason to stay. The messenger can go. So, like, when you change your password, like, the little thing doesn't ding again. But like, if you shut down your computer and you haven't dealt with it, when you turn your computer back on, that message comes back up and it's like, "Hey, your password's expiring in 6 days. Click here to change it." And then, I don't know if you've ever done this, classic Carly, like, I've ran out of gas a million times. I've let my password completely expire to where now you got to go get with IT to, like, even unlock your account. And so the consequence of not handling the message when it's telling you, like, here's the message, and that basically is your opportunity to handle it proactively. Because think about your gas tank. Like, when the gas light comes on, you can stop and you can fill up with gas and you keep on going, and it costs you 10 minutes of your life, and that's it. And if you don't, if you don't stop and spend those 10 minutes, basically you're signing up to lose hours of your time to have your car run out of gas, and now you got to call somebody or wait for somebody, or you got to leave it in the middle of a busy intersection in Dallas, Texas at 5 p.m. on a Friday, and there's people honking and they call the fire truck to come and get the stalled vehicle out. Like, you can handle it proactively when it's small, or you can ignore it and it can get bigger, and don't worry, it will. Like, that's Abraham's saying, if you don't handle it when it's little and small and, whatever, like, don't worry, it'll get bigger. And then you can see it easier. And it's easier to deal with at that point, because at that point, it usually pushes it to the point where you don't have a choice. Like, I ran out of gas and my car won't go. So now I can't, easily fit it into the natural unfolding of my day. I have to stop what I'm doing at Friday at 5 p.m. and have all the people hate my guts, because now it's like backed up for miles. And, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I just ignored the warning signs a little bit too long. And then I had a problem on my hands that I really, it was really stressful. And, like, you know, I knew I was running a risk by ignoring the warning signs. I knew, I hope I make it. I hope I can get there. I know I'm almost out. I know I'm pushing it to the limits. And when you do that, like, when you're pushing it to the limits, like, that's okay. It's like you just have to learn, like, where even is your limit? Like, I learned real quick that basically my car, it's super helpful. Like, when I was running out of gas, like, in that moment, I had ran out of gas according to my gas or my dashboard, like, where it'll tell you, like, range 20 miles, range 15 miles, range 3 miles, range 1 mile. And then it was on 0 and I made it still. Like I was literally on fumes until it was like I had to turn right and turn left and here's the gas station and turning right. Oh, I'm like right across the street from the freaking gas station. And that's where it stopped because I think it needed to show me that like, you know, really we're doing our best to tell you as early as possible, give you as much warning as possible that this problem needs your attention. And when you ignore it, ignore it, ignore it, ignore it, ignore it, and then you end up in a situation where this is intense, this is stressful. I've now included a shit ton of other people in my mess, and I'm now negatively impacting you guys, and I'm really sorry. And now there's all that going on in there of like, like it was way a bigger deal than like if I had just taken the proactive message and carved out the time to deal with what needed dealt with, you know? And like that's a funny example and easy peasy. I can just as easily tell you what I've done it with my emotional gas tank, and the car stalled out on the side of the road looks like pulling your boss into a conference room and proceeding to like break down crying, such that she gives you, bless her soul, 2 free weeks of vacation because you are in no shape to be in public, let alone at the office. You need to go get your shit together and come back when you feel better because this is not workable. And in that moment for those couple weeks, like my car was out of gas, stalled out on the side of the road. And like, you know, as frustrating as it is to want to help, like I generally feel like I'm a helper, a teacher, a giver, a fixer. Like I genuinely want to be of service. And as frustrating as it is that I only have these 2 hands, and so much of the time, how much that limits me to how much I'm able to give because I only have these 2 hands, it is even worse. It is even more frustrating when I don't even have these 2 hands because they're connected to a vessel that is stalled out on the side of the road that cannot be of service to anyone. So this has been like a little bit of my journey towards like understanding the functionality of emotions. Like we're not just talking about like hippy dippy voodoo, like not voodoo, woo woo stuff as far as like intangible, you know, tap into your emotions, don't tap into your emotions. It doesn't matter. It may not matter to some people, but as far as I can tell, building a life that allows me to feel safe and empowered and connected and creative and free and like I'm on the leading edge of being who I was truly born to be. How I got here and how I continue to hold myself in this place is because of my relationship with my emotions, my day-to-day, moment-to-moment relationship with it. And I also like, you know, I feel like I really did like come from a place of I identified as a robot, as an alien, as like I didn't even think I had emotions. I felt so cold and calculating on the inside. And I think all that was that I had a very tight wall on where my emotions were allowed to be, and it exists right about here. And I can really enforce this boundary to keep my emotions just away from my awareness completely. Like I just keep them detached. And this was back then. And then they would sneak up on me. They would do things like pull my boss into the conference room and fall apart in front of her. Like this is the best I can do at this moment, you know? And it's like if I don't want it to be this big intense eruption, then it needs to be a smaller, subtler process. And that's where I was so grateful to find Abraham Hicks. And that's basically essentially what she teaches. And I think where this all ties together, as far as like we are here to talk about the sun entering Cancer and the Cancer new moon, um, First of all, for those of you that have intense Cancer energy in your charts, I'm betting that you probably already resonate with a lot of like just the emotional volatility of what I'm talking about, that there absolutely are emotions that come up, and what we choose to do with them when they come up, I mean, we're either going to handle it now or we're pressing snooze to prolong it to later. And if you put enough stuff in the later pile, like you can't really be held accountable for what the eruption ends up looking like, kind of thing. Um, but this energy that we're going to go through in these next few weeks, with the sun going through Cancer from June 21st through July 22nd, and then the Cancer new moon on June 28th or 29th, depending on where you're at on the planet, it's like this could very well lead to, well, my prediction, my sense, my feeling of this energy is it is basically a heart opening. Like I hardly ever draw the Ace of Cups, like almost never, which, whatever. Everybody has their cards that they almost, pretty regularly draw. And this isn't one of them that I usually get. And so I think it's like so perfect, especially for the Cancer new moon, to think of Ace of Cups, like a heart opening, newfound emotions, like a territory of emotion that is new, a depth, an intensity, a volume. Like that's basically when you get a lot of planets into Cancer, which like at the time of when the sun goes into Cancer, it'll kind of be there by itself, other than Black Moon Lilith is moving through Cancer right now. I learned today that it spends about 9 months per sign. And so this feels, kind of intentional as far as um, the sun at the time of the new moon. So the sun and the moon will be about a degree away from that Black Moon Lilith. So it's definitely very deliberate that this year during Cancer season, we also have Black Moon Lilith hanging out in Cancer, adding her symbolism to the mix, which I'm not going to get a whole lot into. If you want to hear more about it, I would point you back towards Pam Gregory talked about it a lot, like in her full moon and Sag video. And then she just released a video for the summer solstice, which is AKA like the day that the sun goes into Cancer, because the summer solstice is 0 degrees and 0 minutes of Cancer. And then the winter solstice is the same, but for Capricorn. So that video that she has like a conversation with David, I don't recall his last name, but they talked about it a lot in there as far as her symbolism and what that adds to it. But yeah, so at this time, it's only the sun and moon. That was my point, was that it's like how Molly McCord put it, like they're kind of like out here on the front. Like there's all these planets through Gemini and Taurus and Aries and even Neptune and Pisces. There's like all these planets here, and then you have like the sun, and then joined by the moon, and like it's kind of like leading us into this new territory on the leading edge. And then as we go through these next like several months, we'll have Mercury go through Cancer, we'll have Venus move through Cancer, Mars will go through Cancer, but it's going to do like a 7-month retrograde thing through Gemini first. So that won't be until like early next year that Mars will go through Cancer, probably about the time of or shortly after the Cancer full moon, which will be January of 2023. So this is like opening something new. This feels like when you jump into cold water, and it's a lot. It's startling. It's like shocking even. It's like, why the fuck did I do this? Like, take it back, take it back. Can't take it back. But how quickly the body will acclimate, like if you just relax and move your limbs around, get your blood flowing, you can very quickly get used to it, and you can adapt. And as humans, we are extremely adaptive creatures. Even those of us who aren't so adaptive, still, it's just part of our nature as humans that we will adapt to the situation that we're in. Normal is just what you're used to. So it feels like that. It feels like potentially we could be on the verge of something of a little bit of a tidal wave, a little bit of a shock to our system, with the volume of our emotions maybe getting cranked to a level where we aren't used to having that in our experience. even those of us that are emotionally like, really rich in our emotional inner lives, like I expect no different. Like I personally am expecting a heart opening. I'm expecting like, and when I say heart opening, like it really does go back into Brene Brown's work of like leaning in to our own vulnerability, like leaning into our willingness to be imperfect, leaning into like what is it that you truly need and allowing yourself to have that. Um, Cancer is a lot about what we need. And Cancer as an archetype, I'm going to go through um, a little bit in depth here just to kind of set up a basis for the rest of what we're going to talk about. Um, so Cancer is associated with a lot of things. Like I did a little bit of a deep dive yesterday was my intention on like what is Cancer energy. And again, it was like even more powerful because I had just had that reading where I found out that in my Draconic chart, my soul chart, that I have all of this energy in Cancer. So I suddenly had an even more like personal hunger for understanding like what even is Cancer energy. And there's so much out there as far as like the symbolism and I can ramble and talk in depth about all kinds of tangents to do with everything, but at the heart of what I want to do always is like boil it down to like what is the simplest version of like what is this energy, especially when you think about like we all have all 12 of the zodiac archetypes within us. So we all possess Cancer energy in us somewhere inside of our inner psyche, our inner schema of like how we're wired and how it all works together. There is Cancer energy inside of us all somewhere. So there's a real practical application to figuring out like what am I even looking for? Like what is Cancer energy? And at the very heart of it, I can feel that it's feeling. It's raw, personal, emotional truth, not from an intellectual standpoint, not from an ability to speak it out loud standpoint. It's a feeling it in this little region, in your like literally feeling it in your heart, inside your vessel, allowing it to flow, allowing it to be expressed no matter what that looks like. And when you think about all of the different ways that emotion can be expressed, words are one of the hardest mediums to employ because to take what you feel and turn it into the spoken word, you have to run through something called the prelingual cortex or something like that. And it's like when you really have to process, you're no longer in the territory of the heart. And so that's where art is born. It's like that's why people paint, that's why people dance, that's why people sing, that's why people do all different kinds of art that encapsulates their emotion in a way that like you can convey it more directly in what shade of red do you choose, or how fast you dance, or how slow you dance, or like the growl and the emotion that you can put into your voice as you sing a song. Like there's such a depth in pictures are worth 1,000 words, or the quality and the sound of what you're able to produce and encode it with your emotion. It's such a more direct expression for emotional energy than words will ever be. So when we really get into this sense of like, what is Cancer energy? It is having access to your own raw emotions. Like, like I know for myself many times in my life, especially when I was like really cut off, when something really intense would happen, I would just feel numb. I wouldn't feel anything. Like when my grandpa died, like I just was like there just wasn't anything. Like there wasn't any feeling. It was like just that thought sitting in my head of like he's gone, and there like wasn't an emotional response. And then I like beat up on myself because like what kind of a person like isn't gonna cry over her grandpa dying? Like I really loved him. Like why aren't you feeling anything? So I would beat up on myself. And it's like I didn't feel anything. at that point, and I just didn't know it because I still felt enough was seeping through, and that was kind of, again, where I wanna start with, like, well, obviously, we're way past starting at this point, but where, like, there's a reason we deny our emotions. Like, let's be real. Let's just start there. That, like, we don't repress our emotions for no reason, okay? And the more some of us are repressing our emotions a lot more than others, and some of that is, like, on purpose. From, like, an evolutionary standpoint, when you are going to be engaged in your feelings and processing your feelings, like I said earlier, like, this week has been mostly dominated by emotional processing, and I have done very little else. Because you essentially, like, imagine, like, Cancer is opposite Capricorn. So, like, when the sun is in Cancer, the earth is in Capricorn, or, like, if you have a Cancer sun, your earth is in Capricorn. It's like we naturally have that ability, that awareness that, like, to go into the world and do what needs done, you gotta shut it down. Like, you need to get your emotions under control, or, like, get yourself together, or all of these ideas are just that's that Capricorn earth that, like, yeah, when you have really intense emotions, that's one of the first skills I would learn is, like, not just how to open the floodgates. We don't just want them open. We want to know how to open them, yes, and know how to close them. Like, we want to know how to engage with our emotions in a productive way, and, like, how to let that energy flow so that it isn't just getting bottled up in there, but that we can also, compartmentalization, I feel like, has a little bit of a negative connotation to it, but ultimately, again, compartmentalization, or, allowing yourself to kind of, like, shut down your emotions for just a minute, or detach from your emotions for a minute, it allows you to do something else. There's a trade-off in that. And so I think about, like, what's coming back to me over and over and over again is Aquarius moon. Because those people that have Aquarius moons, like, you were born with an Aquarius moon. Like, that's like saying that, like, your wall is just, like, really intensely in there. Like, the chances of it ever going away is just basically non-existent. Like, Aquarius moon just operates with a detachment from their emotions. And again, I'm like, that's gonna have its side effects, but it's also allowing you to do something different. Like, if you wanted full unfettered access to your emotions, you would have came with your moon in Cancer, but you didn't. You came with your moon in Aquarius. And if people have called you cold and detached and whatever, you're like, yep, that's how I roll. Because that is allowing something different. And that being said, I also don't think it's safe to say that, like, Aquarius moon just doesn't have emotions, because you do. And if anything, the detachment lets you have an easier time, in my opinion, to get on the observation deck that I've talked about several times of, like, essentially that's what we're trying to do is, like, detach so that the emotions aren't so personal. It's like your emotions aren't a judgment on who you are as a person. They're a message, they're a messenger that came to tell you something. And so on the observation deck, we're not getting beat up by the sensations and the emotions and the feelings that are running through us. We're watching them and we're observing, like, what are the thoughts that come with this energy? Where are the feelings in my body? Where are the sensations? Oh, now there's this new thought. Or, like, okay, so the other day, this is perfect. I was on the observation deck while I was having an intense emotional release. This was on the full moon. This was the morning um, of my solar return reading, so Tuesday morning, and I had just come off of recording on Sunday, so just not even a week ago, um, with Maddie and Jody. We recorded our, like, sacred circle for the full moon, basically. And what we ended up talking about at the end was a lot about facing fears, and how, I shared my North Node and my Mars are both in Pisces house, and that is, like, essentially that path of find your fear, find the thing that scares you the most, and do that thing. And I was in the shower and a new song came on and I started dancing like I do when there's a song that just like moves my body, like my body will just start dancing. And in that moment, there was like this avalanche that came of like I just burst into tears, and it was so similar to when I got the message, you need to cancel your wedding, and I realized I was crying because I was terrified, because I was about to do something that scared the living shit out of me. And basically, like, I was going to take my own advice of find the thing that scares you the most and do that. And in that moment, I was realizing the reason I was crying was because I was going to allow my true self to be seen. I was going to have a dance party and record it and like maybe show it to somebody. And I was crying because I was so scared of revealing that level of my authentic self, like letting my truest self, like it felt so fucking vulnerable. Like just the reason I was crying, the reason I was terrified and so scared was because the level of vulnerability was so intense, and facing that like while I was actually dancing, like I was shaking the whole entire time. And it was exhilarating. It was like, and at the end of it, I said something I almost always say when I do something that I'm terrified to do is, "That wasn't as bad as I thought it would be." And that's what I said after I canceled my wedding. That's what I said after I finished my dance party. That's what I said after I, like, went skydiving. That's what I said after the night dive for my scuba certification. Like, over and over and over and over, do the thing that you're most scared to do, and watch how the fear of the fear is actually the worst thing. And when you face fear, is just an emotion, it's just a sensation in your body that feels different than when you're happy. It's just different. It's not bad or good or worse or better or anything. It's just different. And it's letting you know you're on the edge of your right now reality. You're about to cliff dive off of the edge of your right now reality into a brand new reality, right? When you come to your biggest fear and then you face it and you go beyond it, you open your reality up into new realms of levels of existence that you just didn't know were there before. They've always been there, right? That's how like a lot of people say, like, when you finally find self-love, it's like so freaking frustrating because it's like it was in there this whole time. Like, it's inside of me. Everything I need is inside of me. That's so annoying until you actually like unlock it and find it inside of yourself, and then you're like, oh shit, yeah, it was in there the whole time. um okay, so Cancer is one of the water signs, and water energy is, if you read Stephen Forrest's books, his Element series, where he goes through the book of water, the book of earth, the book of fire, the book of air, the book of water, as he lumps together Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, the fourth, eighth, and 12th houses, and the planets that rule those three water signs. And that's what's in the book of water. And at the beginning, he goes through kind of like the arc of what even is water energy. And he summarizes it as water energy is what allows for healing and regeneration. And so healing and regeneration, healing in general, is something that I feel like, especially in these last like 5 to 10 years, like the demand for spirituality is blowing up. And what people are looking for is healing. They're looking to feel better. They want to find something that helps them to feel better in their life. And like all of that is water energy, like wanting to feel better. That's wanting to heal, wanting to have emotions run through you that are pleasurable when they happen. That's not unrealistic to want to feel good. Abraham says it's because on a deep level, you know you should. You know that you deserve to feel amazing. And that's why when you don't feel good, it's so annoying. It's so frustrating because you know deep, deep, deep down, your soul, your highest self knows you deserve better than that. You know, your highest self doesn't care necessarily what you feel. It's all part of the process, all part of the experience. You can learn from any part of the emotional spectrum. feeling good obviously feels good, but like that that divergence from your highest self, your inner self, you're mixing it up in that moment when you feel negative things or things that are uncomfortable to feel. You're venturing into territory where basically you have the potential to heal. When you go into pain, when you allow painful things to surface so that you can grieve those things or you can cry those tears, that that actually does something. Like when you cry, when you grieve, when you allow yourself to maybe even do what might feel like wallowing. And oh man, wallowing has like one of the thickest negative connotations you can find of like in our society, that is not encouraged. It is not encouraged to wallow in your grief or your discomfort, let it go, move on, let it roll off your back, like, like quick fixes, like let's just move on with our day. We don't wallow in emotions that are resolved. That's my 2 cents, is that if you have it to wallow in, you might as well do it because you're either doing it now or you're pressing pause for later, right? Like it's if it's here, if it's wallowable, then there's something unresolved. There's something of a message that is wanting to connect with you. And the more we push it down, the more we tell ourselves like, no, I mean, okay, fine. Like, I'll be sad for today, but tomorrow, like, I got to get back to work. I got to pull it together. Like, shit needs to get done. Bills got to be paid. I get it. Again, like, that's that sun in Cancer, earth in Capricorn. Like, at a certain point, you do need to get it together and, like, eat some food and, pay your bills and do all of the earthly things that we need to do to survive because we're here and we are physical. So, like, there does have to be a balance. But in general, I don't think society gives us permission to wallow in our feelings. And sometimes, like, that's exactly what needs to happen. That, like, Cancer is that, like, that pipeline of, you know, basically the summary of water energy is if you can't feel it, you can't heal it. Healing starts with feeling. So like if you want to heal something inside of yourself, first we have to feel it to even know like what even is the wound that we're trying to heal, what even is the pain, what even is the piece that you're most scared of. I started to say when I had my big emotional release in the shower the other day, where it occurred to me like the thing that I'm most afraid of is my real self being seen. And I was crying so hard. And the pinnacle, I guess, like the epitome of like, like kind of asking yourself as a follow-up to like, I'm scared of my real self being seen. Like, okay, well, like, what do you mean? Like, what is it that you're really scared of people seeing? Like, what's the part that if they see it, they're not going to like you? And the part, I don't think I've told you guys this. I know for a fact that I haven't because the part that came, oh my God, it made me cry so hard because I was like, you're right. Like, I'm so freaking terrified of that being seen and like having to go down that road and like, again, it's like fear brings you to the limit of your reality. And if you can go past the fear, you can open your reality into like a whole nother thing. And the thing that came, the thing that I was most scared of having my real self seen, it's my armpit hair. I don't shave my armpits anymore. I haven't for like a year, a couple years. And again, like most things that I don't do anymore, like wear makeup and fix my hair, it's like I don't do it because I don't feel like spending my time that way. Like I have other things that I would rather do with my time. So I don't shave my legs, shave my armpits, like I don't wear makeup. Yeah, I just spend my time differently. And I've like kept my pits covered at all costs. And it's so crazy. I had no idea I was so sensitive about my armpit hair. And yeah, when I was like really exploring in that moment of like, what are you so scared of? I'm scared they'll see my armpit hair and think I'm weird. That was legit what was there. And I was like, oh, honey, like, that's really all it is. Like, get your ass out there. We're doing it. Come on, we can do this. So yeah, I did it. I made a 20-minute dance party and I sent it to my safe people, you know? Like that's a big deal with with Cancer energy is like, okay, so this is how I would tie a lot of the Cancer symbolism that you hear out there. Here's how I would tie it together is like at the core of like what is Cancer? It is this feeling. It's raw, emotional, personal feeling that you feel in your center, your emotional pipeline pumping out all this emotional energy into your vessel. That's Cancer right here, feeling. And in order for us to feel, around that is a layer of you have to be comfortable in order to feel. Like think about like this wall is here and how do you get that to like open? You're comfortable. And how do you get comfortable? You're safe. So when you feel safe for long enough, you will eventually feel comfortable. And when you feel comfortable for long enough, feelings will rise to your surface. And it's not so much like you have to intentionally try to open this. It's more like, again, when you feel safe for long enough, so you feel comfortable, and then an emotion rises to your surface, it's like you can feel it like knocking on the underside of the wall. It's like, hey, I'm in here. And I can feel myself even still, like when I start crying, a lot of times, like I will feel myself instinctively, just kind of out of habit, because I this is how I've been my whole life. I'll feel myself kind of like clench and like try to push it back down. And now I'm working on like, no, I do want to hear what the message has to say. Like, especially if I'm not in public, like, but I do want to say something about that as far as like the other day. What day was that? Was it Monday? I think it, gosh dang it. I think it was Monday. Um, my air conditioning was uh, frozen up, and so it wasn't working. It wasn't blowing, and it was getting hot in here. So I took the dogs over to my parents' house, and we were over there for several hours. And right before I left, my mom and dad were sitting at the kitchen table with me, and we were talking, and ended up like they were talking about a friend of my dad's and telling a story about how they went down to his cabin on the river, and mom was like, and dad made a joke about, yeah, you never know how many squirrels they're going to catch down there. And mom was like, yeah, that's what was going on when we got there. I was like, what was going on? And they proceeded to tell me a story of animal cruelty that I am not going to relay here because it broke my heart like 100% to hear what was going on that they witnessed as they walked up, like to, go to this guy's cabin and see him and his family or whatever. And I shit you not, like, it broke my heart, the pain inside of me, like, it felt like I broke a bone or something, like, it was intense, it was like a full body, like, just, oh my god, this hurts so much, and it made me have ugly cry face, and I just started crying right there in front of both my parents, and it wasn't like bawling, sobbing or anything, but there were tears, and I couldn't hold them in, there was, like, no I think what's happening a little bit, and I'll maybe warn you of this, is like I've gotten so comfortable letting them come out that now my ability to push them back in is getting weaker. And weaker, I don't mean as a bad thing in this regard, because as I could not push it back in, I like well up and was just like, like can't breathe. It hurts so bad. And my dad, oh my God. My dad, he looks at me and he almost had tears in his eyes and he's like, "Don't cry, honey. It's just a squirrel." And that was like the most comforting, reassuring energy my dad has ever given me. And I look at my mom and she's got tears in her eyes and she's like, yeah, that really was pretty cruel. They really didn't need to do that, did they? And like my intense emotion not being able to be controlled in that moment, my reaction, my heartbreak reaction to this animal cruelty, this story about a fucking squirrel I've never met before, um, it touched both of them. It softened both of their hearts. Like they both felt a deeper sense of compassion, not for the squirrel at first, I don't think. Obviously, like their compassion was for me because my heart was broken. But in having compassion for me, they did end up like what my mom said about like, yeah, that they really didn't need to do that to that squirrel. Like she hadn't even thought about like the fact that that's like really freaking cruel. Like who does that? Like what's going on? This is not normal. They hadn't even dawned on them that that's like freaking sadistic to do that. And they both agreed after seeing my reaction to it. So like, should we control our emotions? Should we push them back in there? Should we deny the world of seeing what breaks our heart? Like, should you keep that to yourself? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. I like I said, I want to be compassionate to anybody and where they're starting because I definitely started from a place of, do I even have emotions? I don't think so. And then when you do a place of like acknowledging your emotions, there is so much of like, spotting an emotion like, oh, there's guilt. Like, I feel guilty. And then you're like, no, I don't want to feel guilty. And then trying to like jump trains or make a gratitude list or like get off the subject of like what's making you feel guilty, of like basically trying to push away the emotions that you are able to identify, um, because there is so much stigma around just negative emotion in general. And I think it's obviously getting so much better, like mental health in general getting destigmatized, but I think in general life is uncomfortable, life is vulnerable, life is scary, life is uncertain, life is full of things that, if you had a time machine you'd probably go back and try to do it better. Like there are so many different ways that we can find ourselves in that negative end of the emotional spectrum where, if you think about emotions as guidance, that there is there are good feeling emotions and there are, bad feeling emotions or physically uncomfortable emotions and physically comfortable or pleasurable emotions. And again, helpful if we try not to think about it as good or bad, because again, that helps us to depersonalize and say, like, if I do feel something that is fear or shame or guilt or whatever it is, that like that's just an indicator for where I am right now. Like how Abraham describes your guidance system, your emotional guidance system is like one big game of hot and cold with your inner being. Like your bad feeling emotions are colder, 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 like yelling at you, colder, like you're going in the wrong way. And then the good feeling emotions, the bliss and the zen and the laughing and the laughing so hard your belly hurts and your cheeks are sore, like those emotions are like hotter, 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 hotter. Like, you know, listen to what the emotion is saying. And this is this is again where it's like, functionality wise, like practically speaking, like, okay, so my guidance, fine. Where does it come from? Like, who is sending me this guidance? Like, when somebody is telling me that I'm going in the right direction or going in the wrong direction, I don't want anybody to tell me if I'm doing it right or doing it wrong. Like, I don't want to follow your rules. That's my own, that's my own inner rebel pushing against anything that even looks like a rule. So it's like, I again feel like I had to really build up this understanding of like who is handing out this guidance, who is telling me hotter or colder. And in order for me to like really work with my emotions in a productive way, I had to see myself as the one giving myself this guidance, my own higher self, my own soul, the part of me that is eternal, the part of me that is the part that even made the plan to come into this life in the first place, the part of me that predates Carly Sue Wharton. Like that, this is just one iteration. This is just one chapter in a much longer process that my soul, my eternal self, is acting out. So this life is intended to move me forward along that eternal journey And my higher self, my soul, that larger part of me is who is directing me hotter, 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 colder, colder, colder. And so it's just me and me. It's my larger self, my higher self directing me towards the things that it knows that I want. It's me. It's not some outside force. And so listening to our emotions, listening to our guidance, like allowing ourselves to trust our emotions. Like, here's another example of what that might look like. Like when I like, okay, so I've been heading into my emotions, venturing into this direction since early 2015. And at the beginning of 2021, I set a yearly mantra, the year of speaking truth. I've talked about it a lot. And I've also said a lot that I thought it was a matter of I wasn't willing to speak my truth. So that mantra was intended to kind of like kick my own ass and like, here, just come on, speak your truth. And what I realized was like, it's not that I'm chickening out on speaking my truth, it's that I don't even know what my truth is. Like, it was in the first few months of 2021 that I realized like just how closed off I still was from my emotions. And that was like a whole process that needed to happen. But in that very first part of the year of speaking truth, one of the one of the truths that rose to my surface that, wanted to come into my awareness was you need to disconnect from your best friend. And I felt so guilty about that. I felt like I should absolutely explain to her what was going on. I felt like I should do a million things differently. And I couldn't, yeah. Like at that point, I didn't have anything to go on like how would I explain to her that I don't want to be friends with her anymore? I have no idea what to say because I don't even know why I want this, but I do. Like there's my emotional truth, like my raw emotional truth is like I don't want to interact with her anymore. And I didn't understand it like on an intellectual level, but I allowed myself to follow that emotional truth and disconnect from this person. And I never did reconnect with the person. I mean, this was like over almost a year and a half ago. And since then, I've realized that, like, basically, yes, the relationship gave me a lot of good, but it also was putting me through a lot of emotional pain that I was tolerating. And the only message that my emotional truth could give me that I could understand in that early phase was she is a hot stove. You are intentionally putting your hand on her, and she is burning you, and you can take your hand away at any time. And that is, I mean, if we want to heal this pain that you're feeling, like this is what needs to happen. You need to like get the thorn out of the paw so the paw can heal. So it can be really hard. I mean, understandably hard to like allow your personal emotional truth to come forward and for you to trust it when there's no way to like draw a picture of the logic behind your decision or like, show the math. How did you get your answer? I don't know. My soul told me to do this. I don't know anything else right now. And so that was probably like the first step in this most recent chapter of like where I'm at now with my emotional awareness of like, emotional truth first and clarity later. Like I don't wait for clarity on why my emotional truth is true before I allow myself to act on it. And giving in to my emotions and like basically allowing them to be whatever they are, um, that like the messenger can come in any form and I'll greet it all the same. And granted, like sometimes pain still comes that is so intense that you can lose yourself in it for a while even. Um, but that's again where I go back to like as much as we can practice getting on the observation deck or, like I talked about, maybe it was last week, maybe the week before, window of tolerance and how like learning how to get ourselves back into equilibrium, how to get ourselves back into homeostasis of like, I I know how to balance myself. Like, even when my emotions get really intense, I know that if I go for a walk outside, if I, literally drop down and like do a plank for a minute, like if I know how to burn off like intense emotional energy. And if you can do that, like practice getting back in your window of tolerance, getting back into a place where I can feel good, that's like allowing like a lifeline almost. Like I think about it like scuba diving, like you have the equipment that allows you to breathe underwater, that lets you go down to deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper because you have the the mechanism to like continue getting the oxygen that you need and taking care of like what does your physical vessel need to make this deep dive into this territory where yeah, it can get dangerous really quickly if you don't have what you need, just like scuba diving. Like if you're at 50 feet and you don't have access to oxygen, then you're in trouble, real big trouble. And emotional territory and diving into our emotions, I think is a lot the same. That like if you go in there without the tools, you can get into a dangerous spot real quick. So I don't take it lightly to Scooby. She had to stretch. Yeah, I don't take it lightly to say, "Oh, just, get in there and swim around and see what's it like." It's like anytime we're gonna venture into deeper emotional investigation, like learning and having these tools at the ready of like, how am I going to come back out of this? How like what's my exit strategy? And don't enter you have an exit strategy. Or if you feel like, here's my exit strategy that I would normally use. And right now, where I'm at, I don't have the energy to execute this. And so, you know what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to go diving. If I don't have the energy to pull myself out of it by doing the escape plan, then I don't have any business going under the water. And that is a thing sometimes where like, if you know that there are particular people or situations or environments that are triggering to you, then be sure that you have your escape plan and the energy to execute it before you go in there. So, like, that for me was, or is still, um, my comments, like reading the comments that I get on my YouTube channel. I mean, those can easily trigger me if I'm not like 100% in the right mindset. And there are a lot of times where it'll be days where I feel like I'm too tired. I'm too tired to pull myself back out of an emotional undertow. So I'm just not even going to go swimming right now. So that's a real part of emotional investigation and the water family and healing and regeneration is that, there's a time for it. We're not just water energy. We're water, earth, air, fire. Like there's a time for healing and regeneration. There's a time for emotional exploration. And there's a time to not be in that space. And that's okay. So allowing it to kind of, like I said, like it'll knock on the underside of the door when it's in there. And as long as we're letting it out on a regular basis, it shouldn't build up and there shouldn't be eruptions. And it's like as long as we put gas in our gas tank on a regular basis, you're not going to wind up alongside the road stranded and have to call somebody for help. Ooh, yes. Yes, Maddie put the it was last week where I talked about the 2 tools for emotion management and like the basically 2 tools to have um before you dive in the pool. It's like you wouldn't just go to the swimming pool not knowing how to swim and like jump in the deep end and hope for the best. That's probably not very smart, like in an earth energy kind of practicality kind of way. um, but that doesn't mean that you can't practice and get a hold of a noodle or go in the shallow end where you can still touch, aka like I can still pull myself up out of the water if I need to. Yeah, those kinds of activities are encouraged as far as like building up our ability to swim around in our own emotional awareness. And I give you all of this to kind of like tie it around full circle to the sun moving through Cancer for these 4 weeks and especially the Cancer new moon, is going to be lighting up potentially new emotional territory that wants to be explored. And that's okay. You know, it can come through a shock, it can come through an intensity of feeling that you're not used to. And again, that's okay. As long as we know how to get back into our balance, get back into that window of tolerance, get on the observation deck, we can feel the intensity. And like Brene Brown says in her TED Talk, it's like you can take that intensity and basically be grateful to be alive. Like that intensity, that exhilaration proves that you are alive, you know? Like I might be a teensy bit of an adrenaline junkie. I hadn't really considered, but there is a level of fear that is, I mean, necessary if you want to feel exhilaration. Like you cannot feel exhilaration without going through fear, is my own personal opinion. Um, it's like we don't have access to that highest register of positive emotion unless we're well versed and willing to face the lowest register on the uncomfortable emotions. So yeah, there's a lot. I feel like I could go on and on and on about emotions and emotion management, but I think that's basically the gist of it. I wanted to I mean, I know we didn't talk a lot specifically about Cancer, more about the practical mechanics of emotions, but I feel like that's essentially what Cancer is that pipeline into ourselves of emotional energy. Vulnerability is the core of shame and fear, but it appears it's also the birthplace of joy, of creativity, of belonging, and of love. Connection with others begins by allowing ourselves to be seen. At the end, she also, well, I guess kind of in the middle, she talks about how in the course of her research, she wanted to understand connection, like what creates connection. And basically, like as she asked people like about connection, they told her the stories of their most painful disconnection. And so almost immediately in her research, she ran into this thing. She figured out it was shame. She was going to research it for a year. A year turned into 6 years. And she understood that shame is essentially a fear of disconnection, is what shame is. And that she then, after the shame research, kind of just separated out the people who had a strong sense of worthiness and only looked at those cases and came to the conclusion that the people who had a strong sense of love and belonging believed that they were worthy of love and belonging, and that that was the only difference. And so, literally, a fear of disconnection is the only thing that ever keeps us out of connection. And so, when we talk about like a heart opening, we talk about like a new level of emotion. I mean, yes, it may bring up like a new level of pain. I'm sorry, but yes, it might. But what it's bringing with it is a new level of love and exhilaration and passion and creativity. And all of it comes through the same pipeline. And if we want the good stuff, you got to learn how to surf the bad stuff too. Bad stuff with big quotation marks around it, because it's just different. It's not bad, it's just different. Can be with a sensation that's different from happiness. That's okay. Um, and what I really feel about this more than anything is we're ready. Like, if you're watching this, especially, like, you're ready for this new level of your own reality, for this new ability to come face to face with the fears and emotions that are the current limit of your own reality, and to be able to move past them into new territory. There is an opening and you are ready. It may be scary. There may be tough things that are coming to the surface with the new territory, but we are ready and our courage is strong enough. She goes through courage in her TED Talk as well, and basically says that courage is the ability to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. The ability to be imperfect, the ability to let go of who do you think you should be and give in to who you really are. And that's that moment that I had with my parents a few days ago of like, I tried to push it back in, and that heartbreak was in for me in that moment. This is the authentic truth of who I am. I am a girl who gets her heart broken hearing about cruel treatment of a squirrel I've never met. That's who I am. And in that moment, that was the realest face I could show my parents, and they reacted with love. I I I don't know that I've ever described either one of my parents as loving. I mean, no offense. They're great people. They have lots going for them, but showing love and compassion, and that's just not that's not their skill set. And in that moment, it was like the purity of my own sadness and grief over this situation elicited their compassion naturally. So it's you got to wonder, like, who's compassionate and who's not compassionate? Like the fact that I don't think they're loving or compassionate towards me, like, is it the chicken or the egg? You know, like, am I showing them my real truth? Am I acting all tough? Like, I don't need their love and compassion, and that's why they're not showing it to me? Huh, Carly? What's going on here? What's really happening? Yeah. So, this is something that I hear a lot, and I feel like more than ever, it's something that I want to toss out is, you know, a big piece of Cancer is the safety piece of like, if you don't feel safe in your environment, you can't feel comfortable. And if you don't feel comfortable, you can't feel. So the safety is the biggest piece of, nobody says you have to go around being authentic 100% of the time, 24/7, taking your most vulnerable heart, putting it on display to every single person in the whole world. That is not at all what Cancer energy is about. It's like, find the environment that does feel safe and let it come out within the walls of this safety. That's why Cancer is a lot of times associated with home. Um, doesn't automatically mean that your home is a safe space, right? Like a lot of people live with people that they don't feel safe with, or they don't even feel safe with themselves. So even when they're in the privacy of their own company, there isn't the safety to express. So, I mean, safety and the idea of home, they do go together quite a bit, but at the same time, like, they aren't necessarily synonymous, because it is possible for your home or your house to be an unsafe living environment. So finding safety is key. Finding a place where you feel safe is step number one to feeling. And I hear both in the comments and from people who come to me for readings and people that I've met through my meetup group doing those events, it's like there's so many people out there saying, I wish I had somebody to talk to about my spiritual path, all of this stuff that goes on, my healing journey. I don't have anybody in my life to talk to about these things. And I get that. On one hand, I sure do. And I've been there, um, where you feel like nobody in my life understands, and that's fine. But at the same time, connection begins with you putting yourself out there. And again, I want to reiterate, I'm not saying put yourself out there to the people in your life who don't feel safe. I'm saying find a different group of people, find your soul people, your soul tribe, your soul family. Family, in my mind, is way more about the safety and the comfort of each other's presence, and to do with blood and how much DNA we have in common, or whatever it is. Like, you can be worlds, light years, universes apart from people who are your like close relative, and find some random person in the world who feels like you've known them for lifetimes. You feel so safe in their presence. So branching out and stepping out into the world and like putting yourself out there and allowing yourself to be seen in a new safe space is very much something that could be coming. Um, Cancer energy wants to connect. It wants to nurture others. It wants to be nurtured in return. So finding a space where you feel safe and you feel okay to express your emotions, like, please prioritize that. And if anything, I would imagine that this like raising the volume of our emotions this Cancer energy is bringing, it's like it'll prioritize itself. you know, finding someone to connect with will feel like just the best possible thing that you could do, is my own personal prediction, and we'll all see how it unfolds. But I did want to invite you to a couple of things. If this feels like a safe space, I host a sacred circle every fourth Tuesday inside my Patreon community, where we get together on Zoom and we have open conversations, open questions, and bringing up like basically what is going on in your life right now. There's no set agenda. There's no set teaching or message. Like every once in a while, like I do have something that I want to share kind of up front that's going on for me personally. I usually think that, if it's something that feels really pressing and I have to talk about it, probably there's something in there that other people can relate to. And a lot of times, like that'll end up sparking its own conversation where others can kind of bring their own stuff out to the table. Um, but yeah, that's one such safe place where you are absolutely invited. Patreon is obviously it's a subscription where it's going to charge you every month, but I do have it set at pay what feels good to you. So for as little as $1 a month, you can come and join that community if that feels like a safe space. The other space that I am creating slash cultivating slash facilitating that I am stupid excited about is my group coaching program that will be live for open enrollment tomorrow. It is already opened for enrollment through the Patreon community. So the links are already in there. There's an even deeper discount if you enroll. Today is the last day to enroll through the Patreon for that lowest price of $155. Tomorrow, enrollment will open for everyone, and it'll be the early bird price of $177. And that will go through, Maddie, can you remind me of the date? Is it like July 14th, maybe? Just a few days before the program starts on July 17th. And I've kind of given it the overarching umbrella title of Soul Revelation and Spiritual Business. So that's like a gigantic territory that we're aiming to cover in these 12 Sunday sessions. It's 12 Sundays every other week, and we'll meet for a couple hours. And these sessions will have a teaching that'll take up about half of the 2-hour space. And then the other half is open for discussion and individual readings. And it'll differ each time depending on what the module is. But the first few sessions are the Soul Revelation series, as far as we are going to really stock your toolbox, is how I think about it. Like my goal with this Soul Revelation and Spiritual Business program is to take my own toolbox and like empty it out, like dump it out in front of you through these 12 modules, so that you can like take what works for you and put it in your own toolbox, so that as you set off on your path, you have the tools to face the challenges that are inevitable when you set off on a path of following your passion and potentially, employing yourself, or like trying to make a living without having a traditional job, basically. So the Soul Revelation sessions, we're going to look at the first one is Strengths Finder, where you'll take the Strengths Finder test and get to learn your top 5 strengths. And then we'll also be looking at Myers-Briggs in that session. The second one, we'll look at natal charts, and we'll look at your progressed sun and moon and what phase those are in terms of your life's overall evolution. The third session, we'll look at human design and gene keys. And so those ones will have mini readings associated, where members of the group will get specifics about their charts looked at and discussed. Depending on how many people sign up, we'll do as many mini readings as we possibly can. But also my goal is to like teach over the subject in a way where everyone could take their own chart and understand different pieces of it better. So it'll be a mixture of a little bit of teaching, but mostly looking at personal charts. And then the last like 8 sessions or so are devoted to business skills. And not in a traditional sense, I don't think. Like, I'm not going to teach you how to use Excel and like, the nitty gritty, like those kinds of tools. For example, there's one session in there called Shadow Work and Entrepreneurship, where we're going to talk through very, very frequent shadows that can come up when you are trying to employ yourself. Things like imposter syndrome, things like, just feeling like I need somebody else to make this tough decision, or who's going to tell me if I did a good job or not. Like when you don't have a boss anymore, it's very, very different to be your own top of your hierarchy person. And so that's like a whole shift. And so there's going to be a lot more around mindset and how to emotionally cope with the journey of setting off down this direction of making a living using your spiritual gifts or your talents or your passions, however you like to think about it. Oh, Andrea, we would love to have you. I think it's going to be so much fun. The other piece, oh my gosh, the other piece that I'm so excited about is the networking. So I've heard on multiple podcasts that I've listened to how, like one example, they were talking about their coaching program that they're going to do, and they're both kind of like healers in a different sense. They have different modalities and stuff like that. And they partnered up and are hosting this program or whatever. And they were talking about how they met in a program just like the one that they're getting ready to host. So like that feels like one of the best pieces of this whole thing is like, I feel like people, I mean, you may not resonate with every single person as your soul family or as a member of your soul tribe, or like you want to be BFFs with every single person in the group. But like, I feel like you're going to meet at least somebody who is a member of your soul family who resonates in this direction. And to further facilitate that on top of the modules, I'm really wanting to organize like some social hours where it's not a planned agenda per se, where like, for example, we can like break down into like breakout rooms over Zoom and get into some smaller groups where we can have some more intimate discussions. I really, for some reason, feel like we need to have like a show and tell session where like you bring like, here are these cards and I really love it. And this is my favorite one. And this is a crystal that I really like. And, let me share this thing on my natal chart that I just learned about. It's a draconic natal chart. And oh my gosh, I nerded out so hard. And like, we just take turns like sharing the things that really light us up. And just imagine the ability to like, again, connection starts with being seen. If you're willing to step forward and say, this is my favorite crystal, it's so powerful, it's, just whatever example you want, this is the thing, this is my aloe vera plant, I nursed it back to health for like whatever. And then people who are listening can be like, oh my gosh, I'm so into plants, or like, I have that exact same crystal on my desk. Like you can, like it's the little saying of like, you shine your or you wave your freak flag so that other freaks can see your flag and like can know to come over to you and that you're a safe place. So I feel like this is going to be so much fun to get to know each other, get to form those kinds of relationships on top of like the inner work that the program itself is aiming to facilitate, like with the 12 modules that we'll go through. So I am so excited. Again, this is the program that starts on July 17th. Enrollment will be open tomorrow, so it'll be posted across all my socials tomorrow with the links to enroll. Again, if you want the additional discount, so it's $155 if you sign up today through the Patreon. Tomorrow, when it opens for everybody, it'll be $177. And if you wait until when it starts, it's $222, just because there is just a teensy bit of admin work. So we're trying to encourage you to sign up at least 3 days before it starts. But you can join us as soon as it starts. I don't care. You can come play. That's totally fine with me. So if you're somebody who thinks to yourself, I would like to have a community where I can talk about these things, where I can go into my spiritual path and share what's happening for me, I hope you'll consider these two options. Maybe both of them, neither one of them, whatever feels right to you, just know that this option is there, and that, again, connection starts with allowing ourselves to be seen. So I know when I had like chronic loneliness, like feeling so disconnected, I absolutely see now how I was hiding from a fear of rejection. I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want to be rejected. But, if we don't put ourselves out there, we can't be accepted either. So, yeah, it's definitely scary, can be scary to put ourselves out there. But at a certain point, depending on how much love we truly want in our world, like at a certain point, we got to open up and let the heart opening happen. And I just keep feeling the sensation of like, we are so ready for this. We are so ready. So even if you're scared, draw on your resources, draw on your support system. These two options, the sacred circles on 4 Tuesdays and the group program, these are options of like investing in your support system, investing in having a place where you can bring your emotions and safely go through them. Yeah, I'm so honored, literally, to be at a place on my journey where I feel like I have reached a place of like my own emotions are safe with me, and that naturally what comes next is like cultivating spaces in the world where other people can feel that it's safe to bring their emotions and to like have that space and use it in a productive, practical, like earth energy kind of way. As far as, yeah, processing and exploring and sharing what needs shared, giving a voice to what needs voiced, there's a whole universe inside of us, and having people to share it with, I mean, it adds a level of enrichment to life that it's hard to, yeah, it's hard to not want that when you don't have it. And once you have it, it's hard to think of like trying to go back. And so, yeah, I'm super looking forward to that side of it, as far as creating a space where maybe people can make those kinds of soul connections with each other that will live even further into the future beyond like the 5 months that we're going to spend together in that program. So, yeah. The next circle is June 28th. So the fourth Tuesday, June 28th. But yeah, that does, oh my goodness, it's like a week and a half, but still, I hear you. And that's where the group program came from initially. Was I do want to create this space, and I want to cultivate it and open it up so that it's there for people more often, basically. My original intention with the group was to meet every Sunday and to like provide a touch base for people every week. And I feel like this is very Cancer of me, is at a certain point, you got to balance like what are we doing in the earth realm and what are we doing inside of ourselves. And I hit a point where I was like, I don't think signing up for another weekly thing is good for me. Like, I don't think that that's going to allow me enough space to like continue processing my own internal work. And so that's where I was like, I think every 2 weeks, like that's still extra touch points for the people who are already coming to the sacred circles and then coming to the Sundays as well. So that's 3 times a month that I am opening my heart and hopefully creating space where other people feel safe to bring their own emotions and come get a dose of heart to heart connection. Like come together with other people who are on the spiritual path and trying to make sense and learn from their lives and heal our tender and process what needs processed. There's always things to process, and that it can be so helpful to have a mirror to help us see ourselves more clearly, help us have an outsider's perspective on what we're going through, that may help us to like wiggle a piece loose that we didn't have to click into place before. And I'll tie it up with like, I on the channel on Tuesday morning released the latest episode of Heart to Heart. And I recorded this with Maddie and Jody on Sunday, just the couple days before before the full moon. And the episode title is Stepping into Conscious Friendship. And that's a lot of what we talked about in that episode. So if you're interested, we covered a ton of territory in that. But more than just kind of the framework of how our conscious friendship is unfolding is like we have, it's only been going on for a couple months, so very fresh, but have come together about once a month to do a Zoom where it's interactive and we can have that conversation. The one the other day was like almost 4 hours long. So so good. And then in between the once a month Zooms, there is just kind of open-ended space for each of us to record ourselves on video and like do a share and upload that video as an unlisted video on YouTube and then send the link to the other two to be able to watch. And so those videos, I mean, they've really ranged from like 10 minutes to like 30 or 40 minutes of each of us individually doing our shares. And then the other two, they can watch it whenever they have time, fitting it into everything else that we have going on. And again, then also respond in their own time and make a video and send it back. So having something like that, like, again, even if you don't have like a friend in your town or have like someone who is physically, geographically like sharing space with you, there are ways to be connected to other people, even if they live states away. Like the three of us are in 3 different states in the US and are stepping into this space of conscious friendship, creating it together. And it's so beautiful and so timely with all of this Cancer energy that's upcoming. And that really, like, going back to the Ace of Cups and the heart opening, it's like, how does that actually happen? That's always fun to think about. Like, yeah, here's what the energy is predicting, but like, how does that actually play out? And usually there's a new connection of some sort. There's a new person that is kind of like the other day with my parents when my emotion erupted and spilled over. It called a new emotion out of them, and they experienced a different part of their own emotions than I've ever seen. I mean, maybe they're doing this in pub or in private and just not showing it to me, but I've certainly never seen it in my 34 years. Almost 34. My birthday's on Sunday. But there is a very real possibility that a new person, or a new side of a same person is going to help facilitate that heart opening. So once it's open, it's anybody's guess of like what's in there, what's going to flow out. But that's where our tools, our lifelines, and all that comes back, and just community in general, having a place to go where you can express your feelings, you can express like what's coming up in you, what's going on. Like that's a big chunk of that episode. Like that 3 hour heart to heart was us talking about how triggering friendship is. Like we all three have a history with like having challenges around friendship, and stepping into friendship, stepping into connection with other people, letting like having heart to heart connections with other people is triggering. It brings up unhealed patterns from old relationships. And so this heart opening, this new connection, this new territory can very much bring old pain to the surface. But like I said, like you're ready. There's an awareness, there's an observation deck where you're not just in the trigger, you're not just in the pain, you're watching it from a different vantage point. That like when you step into conscious friendship, like in our experience, what we talked about in the episode is like it's bringing up this healing that wants to happen. And the friendship is what's helping to bring it to the surface. But then each of us individually are responsible for processing what the friendship is bringing up in us, so that when we did get on the Zoom and we recorded our conversation, we were able to talk about not like you triggered me and I got upset and like you made me feel defensive. No, here's what was triggered and here's the healing that came out as I sat with it, as I processed it. Thank you so much for, even just being in this space with me, because it is helping me to heal. So it's not about like, in the past, I definitely would have more or less like blamed the other person, like been mad that you triggered me or been hurt or like, why would you say that to me? Or like, whatever, like defensive towards the other person instead of recognizing that, everybody in our life is a mirror. And when we step into close friendship, AKA like just revealing more and more of our vulnerable heart, the chances that the mirror is going to reflect something that is a wound that is in there that's ready to be healed, like there's a really good likelihood that the mirror is going to help you to see something that's in there that you weren't necessarily consciously aware of before. And that's not the other person's fault. Like I told you, I'm like, it was like healing that I was ready for, and it was just a game of musical chairs, and you just happened to be the one who was standing in front of me to trigger it at the time that the healing was ready to happen. So friends can be like super powerful catalysts if we are ready for that. And in my experience, they can also lead to some of the toughest emotions to deal with. Again, if you're not ready to process and own, like, what's coming up in me, it are my patterns. Like, these are the things that I see I'm the common denominator, like this same experience plays itself out in every single friendship I've ever had. So, I'm not mad at her at all. I'm glad that I'm seeing my pattern in a new light from a new vantage point, and I can bring compassion and love to myself and the wounds that cause me to way. There's a lot that connection can heal. Um, but basically, like all of that connection, like it's helping us to heal by triggering us. So, relationships in general, like it's an intense emotional territory that I feel like, you know, we're wired for connection. That's just like how we are. And so many of us, like we go through so much relationship without ever really understanding that this person's just a mirror of me. This person is just here to help me see myself more clearly. Like, I know that sounds cold and disconnected and detached from the other person, and I don't fully mean it in that way, but at the same time, it's like, you know, like I right now in my relationship, she and I both are very clear on when I feel triggered by my relationship or something that she says or whatever, like I take it into my emotional workshop, my processing space, and I see like what is the underlying wound that was the reason that this trigger upset me so much. Like, not, I'm trying to forgive you and you need to give me time. Like, there's nothing to forgive. Like, all she did was step on this little wound here, and like let me work on that some and let me get a sense of that. And then I'll come back and I'll tell you about what was this wound that was set off by what you said. It's not personal. I'm not mad at all. I thank you for helping me to see myself more clearly. So, all of that to say, emotional territory is my fave. It's like so shocking to me that I feel that way, because for the longest time I thought I did not have emotions, and now as it turns out, this is actually like my favorite territory to explore is emotional territory. If you've ever listened to uh, my podcast episode Mermaid Life, that that really describes like essentially how I see myself as a mermaid, and how like I see myself as something of a guide where I exist at this incredible depth of emotion, like down in the emotion ocean. And I've learned to be really comfortable in this place. And like, I'm familiar with the territory and I like it here. And I can tell you, if you want to you want to get there, oh, you're just going to take a left and then you're going to go down here and you're going to take a right. And it'll be the third place on, like, I know the grounds. And I feel like as I get more and more and more comfortable in this emotional territory, it's like people just keep coming, and I can be with them for just a little while and like guide them, and it's like, here, let me help you like cross this bridge, like let me shine my flashlight so you can see how to get across this part. And like I don't go with them on their whole journey, and nobody's really here all the time with me, which is fine. That's part of what I had to get, like, integrate, was like the loneliness, or the fact that like these gifts of emotional territory, like they mostly exist in solitude, like for the most part, like when you're doing your processing, a lot of that happens like inside of you. And that that can be a little bit lonely at times, to like disconnect from the outside world so that you can connect to inside of yourself. But what I'm finding is like really not lonely once you do connect to inside of yourself and your needs and your right now real time emotional current. That's what I'm saying, like, it just keeps, like, bringing me together with other people who happen to be down here at this depth, and who are wanting to understand more about their own emotions and their own triggers and their own emotional wave that they're trying to not get beat up by, and trying to ride it, and trying to still be productive in your life, and trying to do the things that are important to you. There's so much to this beautiful world and this beautiful life that we get to live, and I feel like our emotions are such a huge part of that, just in the sense of, like, if you're afraid of something, AKA if you have an emotion of fear that you are not willing to face whatever it is that you're afraid of, the fear is stopping you. The fear keeps you small, and it keeps your reality inside of this space where your goal may be like all the way out here. Like, I want a relationship. I want to be my own boss. I want to, whatever it is that I want, it's out here on the other side of fear. So if you have like fears that you want to face because your goals are bigger than your right now reality, we're talking emotion management. So I may be biased, but in my world, like basically all roads lead back to emotion management. But again, maybe that's like full circle with my draconic chart of like all of that huge stellium of energy in Cancer. Plus, my Pluto stayed in Scorpio and my Mars stayed in Pisces. So in my draconic chart, I am way more watery than even in my natal chart, which is already pretty watery. So yeah, emotion management. That's my thing. It seems to be coming up a lot at the live streams lately. And again, it comes from a place of like, you know, not to minimize what anybody else is doing, like everybody has their own path. I don't just want to talk about astrology. I want to apply astrology to real life, and I want to like literally milk the practicality out of it and boil it down into its essence of like, what do we actually do with this? And the next 4 weeks of all of this Cancer energy, like really turning up the volume on our feelings, like we have a rich opportunity to explore this emotional territory, become more aware of the range of emotions, of like where we're fluctuating. All of these things are going to be open to us if we are willing to explore them, if we're willing to cultivate the safety that can create the comfort to allow ourselves to feel. We may be surprised by what those emotions bring in with them, as far as the thoughts and the blocks that they illuminate. I personally feel like we tend to stand in our own way more than anything else stands in our way. It's easy to get going thinking like, oh, the world's against me, or like, they're not cooperating and that's why I'm failing. Like, I personally think that, and this is how I treat myself, for better or for worse, is like our own fears are the blocks that are standing in our way. Our own unwillingness to do the thing that we're scared to do is what stands in our way. Once we're willing, once we're, our courage is strong enough that we can face that thing that we're so scared of, that there really is an opportunity to expand your life. And that so much of what I've learned in this lifetime says that, like, to get what you want out there, the key for me is to like point my awareness into my emotions and to handle what's going on in here. And the better I get at handling what's going on in here, the more my world naturally evolves to basically reflect the inner peace and calm and love and compassion that I have cultivated inside of myself. and that the physical world like catches up more and more and more all the time as I feel better and better and better on the inside. So that's that's a lot that had very little to do with astrology, but was very much inspired by astrology. Um, Hope you're into it because that's what we did today. And yeah, I think that's about all I got for this. Yes, I think that's all I got for this day. The rest of my day, I'm so excited. I get to go to Kansas City and get my hair cut. And I picked when it was time to like shop for a salon because I haven't had a professional haircut in like 6 years. I was just like cutting it myself because it was long and it was curly, and I would just like take it and like chop some off every once in a while, and like that was it. So it's been a long time since I had a hairdresser. Like before I moved to Kansas, like my last hairdresser was in Dallas, so I had to find one. And when I went to find my hairdresser, I intentionally picked one that was in Overland Park because that's where my favorite restaurant is. It's an Indian food place that's in Overland Park, which is like an hour and a half drive one way. So it's like a 3 hour round trip to go get my haircut. But I picked that place because it was by the Indian food place. So now whenever I go get my haircut, I get to go eat Indian food. So that's where I'm headed right now, is to the Indian food restaurant. And then I'm going to get my haircut. And then I'm going to stop by the bookstore on my way back and pick up 36 Secrets. I'm so excited. A while back, I gave up Amazon. I don't shop on Amazon anymore. If you need to because you're like disabled or whatever, like, hey, I don't knock it at all. But I, am rediscovering local shops. So I ordered it from this locally owned bookstore in Topeka, and that it takes like 2 or 3 weeks for them to get it into their store. And then they got it last week and I wasn't going through there until today. So like another week. So I mean, the lead time is long. It's obviously not like have it on your doorstep tomorrow, like with Amazon, but the fact that I get to support a locally owned business and the price is like not that different at all. That just recently has become like super important to me. But anyways, that's a digression. But anyways, so I ordered this book. I mentioned it, Secrets, weeks ago, and I finally get it. So pumped. But basically it takes the whole zodiac, like all 12 zodiac signs, and splits them down into their decans. So like 3 decans per sign, so that's 36, and then gives one of the minor arcana tarot cards to each of the decans, and uses that tarot card associated with like Cancer Decan 1 is 2 of Cups, Cancer Decan 2 is 3 of Cups, and Cancer Decan 4 is 4 of Cups. And then it uses that tarot symbolism to like further drill down into each of the individual decans of each of the signs. So to further personalize and just expand on like what this energy is. So I'm so excited to get that book so I can start working with it personally. If you're interested, if any of that sounds really cool, Maddie put the book, 36 Secrets, but then also there is a podcast called the Fixed Astrology Podcast. And they went through last year and did an episode. It's like 2 hour episode on each of the zodiac signs, and goes through like the decans, and used basically the book 36 Secrets along with a course that they had both taken to put together this discussion on the decans of each of the zodiac signs. So I listened to the Cancer episode in preparation for this one. And the piece that I love most about what they do is for each decan, they pull forward examples. So like they'll go through like so-and-so has her midheaven in the first decan of Cancer, or has like Moon and Mercury in the second decan of Cancer. And like they talk about like from their biography, like their story, like why that makes sense, and like give the examples. So that really personalizes it, I think. And you can kind of see even easier, like what does that look like when that energy is in motion. So highly recommend that podcast. They are super fun to listen to. And yeah, so that's what I'm doing the rest of my day. This is like a super busy day for me. Normally one thing is pretty much my max, but I'm going to get a haircut and go to the bookstore and go out to eat today. So that's, like, I'm going to need like all day tomorrow just to recover, but I'm totally willing to do that because of all the fun things I get to do today. So yeah, I'll also have slightly different hair next time. This has got to go. This is driving me wild. Like, do you see this? I'm going to show you. Like, look at this is too much. Why? No, I don't want, don't like, put it all back there. This, I keep like trying to like, get back. So we're gonna cut it. We're gonna, just like, it'll be different. Again, I'm so excited. So yay. And happy birthday weekend. Thank you. I'm so excited. I get to go to Wichita on Sunday because the summit starts like first thing Monday morning. And for those of you that know me well, you'll know exactly how exciting this is. I get to give a 5-minute speech on stage in front of several hundred people first thing Monday morning. And I am pretty freaking stoked about it. So it's been a long time. It's been like 3 years since I've physically stood on a stage and gotten to give a speech. Granted, that one was like 30 minutes long. This one's only 5, but I'll take it. So that's first thing Monday. So yeah, I have a whole lot going on in this upcoming week that I'm sure I'll have plenty of fun things to update you on next week when we talk about Neptune retrograde in Pisces. So I will see you again then. And yeah, otherwise, you guys take such good care of yourselves, especially with all this Cancer energy. Nurture yourself just a little bit extra. And I'll be seeing you soon. Have a great rest of your day, your weekend. Okay.